hopefully if anyone joins us after, they can catch up after the session starts. So first and foremost, my name is Remy, and I'm from Logix Academy, and I am super, super excited to be hosting this session with you. A special guest speaker in my mind who I've been working with for many years. So today's session is a continued of our training, virtual training series at Logix, and I'm super honored to have with us today Annika Pint from Virtual Robotics Canada, who's just an amazing individual, and I'm sure will be sharing with us some great resources to help all of us engage our students and provide tools for us students that are meaningful and authentic, and in ways that we can engage with them in a remote learning setting. And I won't say much further, as I'm sure she's going to be sharing some exciting news with all of you by just participating. So that's great. I do want to share with you a little bit about Logix and this training series. So as some of you may know, if you've been joining our series, Logix is a Canadian company based in Markham, Ontario, with three main divisions: our education division, providing solutions for schools and school districts across the country, our consumer robotics division for products available in the retail market, and then our academy for student programs in and out of the school, and now all virtual programs. You may be familiar with some of our products from kindergarten all the way to secondary, and makerspace for 3D printers and laser cutters. And of course, actually a small side note, I personally have a close connection with FIRST and Lego Robotics, because it's what got me in robotics in the first place. I joined in one of the first years FIRST came to Canada as a grade 12 student, I guess close to almost 20 years now. So it's been a while, but since then been mentoring and supporting teams, and it's such a great initiative. At Logix, we focus very much as well on delving deeper, not just in an extracurricular perspective, but also bringing that into the classroom. So curriculum from teaching to code and STEM content aligned to international standards, but also integrating it in math and science, English language arts, so that they are learning resources for the classroom. And then conducting tons of PD online, in person, when that was allowed, and hopefully returning soon. Really excited to really have an impact across the country and continue to learn and connect with teachers and educators across the country. And the way that you can also connect is by joining our free community, where you can become a Logix teacher, join the community, connect and collaborate and share resources with other teachers and like-minded individuals across the country. And lastly, this virtual training series has really been brought to us. We're super excited to have over 40 sessions a week of different topics and content. So if you're interested in anything, don't hesitate to join. And we're thank all of our partners from Microsoft, Intel, Wonder Workshop, MakeBlock, Let's Talk Science, and of course today, Virtual Robotics Canada, for partnering with us and bringing you some really wonderful topics. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Annika to share today's session on building and coding Lego robots using the Virtual Robotics Toolkit.
Thanks, Remy. Let me just try sharing my screen.
You should, I'll just disconnect here and you should be good to go.
Is that coming up okay?
It is, yes. We can see it now.
Thanks for checking. I do also want to thank you at Logix Academy for including me in the virtual training series. And I also wanted to thank all of the educators for joining the call today during an end to the school year, unlike any that we've seen before. And also at a time when there are other things going on, and it's important to be standing in solidarity with members of the Black community, and also to be engaging in the struggle for racial justice in ways that are accountable and concrete. And I get that is probably taking priority for many of you compared with coding and robotics, but hopefully this is some valuable information that you can use to benefit your students in the future. So thank you so much. I know that some folks have been adding into the chat some of the schools from which they come and the grades that they teach, but I would love it if we could have some audience engagement, and so that would give me a better idea of what made you decide to register for today's session. What were some of the things that you hope to gain, and I'm hoping to be able to touch on all of those as we go through the call, and if not, to be able to follow up with any questions that you have that weren't answered for you during today's call. So the way that you can participate is by visiting www.menti.com. And I'm going to switch views really quickly here. Hoping that if you use the code 47130 at www.menti.com, you can try inputting your answers there to let me know and what interested you about this session. Maybe you've used the Virtual Robotics Toolkit before. Maybe getting your hands on physical robotics equipment is a challenge. I know that as online learning continues, this is definitely a great way to engage students that have access to the type of technology that they would need. Of course, who doesn't like hanging out with Rami? Yeah, and for those of you that do have a team or that have robotics equipment, this is a way for other students to be able to also be coding and building virtual robotics when they're waiting for their turn with the physical robot. That's great. And again, as probably mentioned in the description, the Virtual Robotics Toolkit is available free to you and all of your students, and we'll talk more about how you can access that during today's session. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing some of those ideas. And again, the amount of time it would take to learn how to code really expertly with some of these different platforms is more than we have time for today. But again, hoping that you get a little bit of a flavor today that will entice you to continue your learning afterwards. These are some great suggestions. Let's see if we can just get another quick. Again, I didn't see this information, but if you could quickly share what grade you teach. The Virtual Robotics Toolkit, using it can be adapted for many different grade levels. And there are some curriculum-based activities that I'll share with you that you may want to use as they are, or again, to adapt for use with your the grade that you teach. Wow, what a big range. And I can see that we've got people joining from all across the country with a lot of different experiences and expertise. So this gives me a good idea. Yeah, I think I'd be interested to hear how the kindies enjoy this tool. So let's keep going and see what it's like. And just a reminder that there will be a prize draw at the end. And so please stick around because you must be on the call at the time the prize winner is announced to be eligible to win this prize. And Remy, I think you'll help me out with the selection of the winner at the end. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have a generator happening in the background while you're presenting here.
And when you say generator, you mean randomly pick a name, unlike me, who was going to put the names in a hat.
That's correct. Random electronic generator.
Old school. Okay, let's keep going. So, as you've also probably read in the description for this session, the Virtual Robotics Toolkit is a robotics simulator designed for use with LEGO Mindstorms, and it lets you design, build, program, and test virtual robots without the need for a physical space for testing, but also the physical equipment to build and program. And as many of you mentioned in your reasons for joining, this is a great way to engage students in coding and robotics in a remote learning environment. If/when we get back to the classroom, if you have limited access to the physical robots, this is a way for students to still benefit from that experience. And for any of you that are currently or may in the future coach First LEGO League Challenge teams, this is again an opportunity to give the students some training and skill development without them always having to have their hands on a physical robot. In the, I guess, suppose in the instructions that Stuart sent, there was an invitation for you to get some of these software installed and on your devices before today's session. And I think it may be hard to tune in for the session and try the software at the same time, unless you're high tech and you've got multiple screens going or split screens going. But either way, when you or your students do decide to give this a try, these are the 4 different types of software that work in conjunction with one another to make it possible to build, program, and test virtual robots in these environments. Fortunately, they're all free, and there's just this challenge associated with getting them all set up and installed on your device before you get going. And speaking of accessing these different types of software, if you haven't done so already, or if you would like to share forward with your students where they can access this software, they can do so at the website shown on this slide. And I'm guessing that these slides can probably be shared with the group after today's session, so you can access these links later in case the screen disappears before you can capture that information. But again, all of those types of software can be accessed at this link. Oh, crap. And once you do get the Virtual Robotics Toolkit, you'll notice that there are different challenges in which the students can participate. There are some, and there are also First LEGO League challenges. So whether you are or aren't coaching a team, there are different ways that you can, the students can engage with these challenges. So whether it's picking up Lego pieces from the floor using a Roomba-like robot. I don't know if any of you have ever stepped on Lego, but that hurts. So here we have a challenge in which the students actually clean it up using a robot. There's a sumo challenge, a maze, and then, as I said, the actual fields on which teams compete with their physical robots during First LEGO League competitions. When you're in the Virtual Robotics Toolkit, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, you can also change the angle or change the view, and I'll show you what that looks like when we enter into the software. So let's do that right now. During this session, we'd love to show you some of the different ways that you can move the robot in the Virtual Robotics Toolkit. You can do that using the keyboard. You can do that by programming it in LEGO Mindstorm's EV3 software or using MakeCode. And just while I get that going, I wanted to check in and see if there were any questions or comments so far that have come up in the chat. I'll take that as a no.
Annika, can you see the chat from your screen?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, I think we're good. There was a question about whether it needs to be loaded offline, and I think the URL has been supplied.
Okay. Yeah, it's the company that makes this software, Cogmation, is working on making this sort of a web-based software so that you don't need to be doing those installations and updates in that way, but they're still working on that. So I'm going to just going to close this if I can and show you how to get into the Virtual Robotics Toolkit right from the beginning. And here's the desktop icon. And the first thing we'll start off doing is moving the robot around in the virtual environment using the keyboard. And for any of you that are gamers out there, you'll know that the W, A, S, and D keys come in handy when will come in handy when you're moving your robot around in this way on the Virtual Robotics Toolkit.
And just a couple of questions here. Is there iPad compatibility, or is it only for Mac OS and Windows? And then is there a Chromebook compatibility?
Great question. Yes, the unfortunate answer is that it's just for PC and Mac at this point. And thanks everyone for your patience. Of course, I could have just left the window open because you probably all know how to open a software. So thanks for your patience. We'll get there.
While that's happening as well, there's a couple of other comments. So folks are excited about getting access to the FLL field in the virtual environment. And it seems like there's some challenges around getting the link to work for Mac. I mean, without delving deeper into technical support during this call, I would recommend maybe we take that offline or reach out to, I'm assuming Cogmation has the support on their website. So for Jocelyn and Marina to get that support, but it is compatible, should be compatible with Mac and with Windows.
Perfect. Yeah, and they do have a pretty responsive support line. Awesome. So I'm going to just open, I'll just open an existing challenge, if I can find one. There we go. Slow today, of course. We'll start off with a challenge called the Cleanup Challenge. The point of this challenge is to try and use your robot to knock over the pieces of a tower that are located in the middle of a platform without your robot itself falling off the platform. And there are a couple of, again, as I mentioned, there are a couple of different ways you can do that. This by using the keyboard, also by programming it using Lego Mindstorm's EV3 software or using MakeCode. And if things keep going at this pace, I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to see how to do all three of those. All right. So here we have a robot sitting on this platform. And if you notice in the top toolbar here, there's a play or a start simulation button. So I'm going to do that. Click on there, and then I'm going to use the W, A, S, and D keys to try and knock these off the platform without my robot itself driving off the platform. And now I'm stuck on the edge, so that means I can't do much else other than stop simulation, which I'll do using this other button in the toolbar at the top. A couple of the other things that you can show is a scoreboard that indicates how long it took you to clear the platform. And also I wanted to show you quickly that you can add on different types of attachments. For example, there are different types of things you can add onto the robot. I'll try maybe a V-shaped shovel and see if that makes the job any easier. So you can see that that's been added to the front of the robot. As I mentioned earlier, you can change the view by using different combinations of keys and your mouse. And let me try the simulation again really quickly using the W, A, S, and D keys. I think with this attachment, it might make my job a little bit easier. And as you can see, there's some randomization programmed into the physics of this challenge, and so things move and behave differently each time, similar to the way they would if you were in a physical environment. So it only took me 19 seconds, and this is a really quick way that you could get your students familiar with the user interface just by driving the robot. Although we haven't really programmed the robots yet, and of course the coding component is a really valuable and powerful aspect of this tool. So let's take a look at that next piece to see how we can make the robot do something similar, but without driving it manually and instead programming it to do so autonomously. So hoping that on my screen you can see both the virtual environment on the left. I'm going to stop my simulation and reset it, and that you can also see the Lego Mindstorm EV3 programming environment on the right. So for the sake of time, I've created a program in advance, but just wanted to show you, talk to you a little bit about what this program means for those of you that are new to using this type of software. So each block is like a different instruction for the robot to perform. And at the bottom of the screen, you can probably see that there's a bunch of different tabs, and within each tab are a variety of different blocks that you can put into your program. The main ones on which I'll be focusing today are the action and the flow control palette, and of course it takes a long time to get used to what all these different blocks mean, and there are resources available to allow you to familiarize yourself really with this software after today's session. So to create this program, I'll just quickly show you that you can drag and drop blocks from the palette below and put them in a chain, like the one that I've already created here. The first block I have there is called a move tank block, and then within the block there are different conditions that you can set that will make the robot perform in different ways. So that first block right here that I've highlighted, hopefully you can see in turquoise, and this first condition tells me the units that we'll be using to tell the motors how much to turn. The 250s here represent the power that's going to the robot, and that translates into speed. And then the 1.5 here indicates how many wheel rotations the robot will do before it moves on to the next block. And what this program is designed to do, so it's designed to drive forward so that the wheels turn 1.5 times. Then it's designed to actually make the robot turn towards that tower that you see on the screen on the left. And the way it does that is you'll notice that one of these 50s is a negative, so it makes one wheel go forward and one wheel go backward at the same time, and the wheels turn 0.6 times. And then in the next block, the robot is programmed to drive forward, and the wheels are programmed to turn 5 times, so that hopefully it will push the tower, the blocks of the tower off the platform. But the next question is, how do I get this information onto the robot? And so I actually have to connect them up so that I can send this information to this main part of the robot, which is called the brick. So I'm going to just do that really quickly. And while I'm doing that, checking in to see if anyone has any questions, needs me to explain anything that I've gone through very quickly.
Nothing new yet, Annika.
Great.
Excited to see how it autonomously programs the robot there.
I've either lost everybody, or there's some overwhelm or some excitement, hopefully a combination of all of them. Okay, so this screen here shows what you would see on what's called the brick. So if you haven't seen a Lego Mindstorms robot, there's this sort of white and gray rectangular piece. It's like the brain of the computer, and it stores information about the programs that the robot's going to do, and it also collects information from the sensors. So you'll notice that, one second. You'll notice that there's a file menu through which I can scroll to find my programs, but I've got to first get the program over there. So you'll notice hopefully in the bottom right-hand corner of my programming window that you'll see a robot name, EV3 Educator Vehicle. And if I click on there, it will actually connect it with the virtual robot in the Virtual Robotics Toolkit. And when it's connected, I can download this program onto the virtual robot by clicking on the download button. And we should hear a sound that tells us that that has happened. Let's check. Yes, okay. Then what I can do is, using these brick buttons, is find my program in a folder called Logix Virtual Training Series, and scrolling down to the program called Drive Turn. And I'm sure you do this too if you work with students who are creating programs, is you try and name it something related to what the program is about, so it's easier to tell them apart. So we've got our Drive Turn program here. I'm going to click the middle brick button to run it and see if it does anything like we want it to. Oh. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You can see that I've totally missed the tower. So if your students were doing something like this, or if you are doing something like this, you might have to go back and figure out what needs to change about my program so that it will perform the way that I want it to. So I'm actually going to change the number of wheel rotations that it turned to 0.8 and see if that makes any difference. Okay, not enough, right? And there are ways that you can measure this precisely so that you're not guessing, but I'll try one more time. Hopefully this is enough. If anyone has any other estimates that you'd like me to try, please feel free to add them to the chat, and I'm sure. Okay. So I got some of them. And as you can see, you can modify the program and continually test it over and over again until you get it just the way you want. This program is also not that good, right? Because if it misses the blocks, the program is over and I can't go back and get any of the other ones. So not to freak you out if this is your first time seeing the Virtual Robotics Toolkit, but I also wanted to share with you another program just to show you kind of the level of complexity that you can get to. And this is by no means the most complex, but it's just kind of a cool example of how you can use the sensors and some of the different programming blocks like loops and switches to make your robots work more efficiently. So I'm going to just quickly reset this, change our angle a little bit. And then I'm going to run this program basically what it does is it uses the ultrasonic sensor to sweep around and see when something is in the robot's way. And when it sees that there's something in the robot's way, it drives towards it. But if it just keeps driving, it could potentially drive off the platform. So there's another component to the program that actually detects where the border of the platform is using one of the color sensors. And when it detects that it's at the edge, it backs up and starts to do its sweep again. So, you know, it's the kind of thing that can do a little bit more thinking for itself instead of just performing some steps and stopping if it's not successful. Okay. So let me try this one really quickly, and then we'll take a look at some of the last way that you can get the robot moving. So I don't know if you can see there's these like beams coming out of the front of the robot. I'm not sure why it's not detecting that last remaining piece of the tower. I was hoping it would just roll off by itself. But again, what I could do is maybe change the threshold of the sensor to make sure that it can detect things that are a little bit farther away. And these are the kind of adjustments that you can make and that your students can hopefully have fun making to see how it impacts the behavior and the performance of the robots. I'm going to just do it one more time as a way to show that it'll hopefully, even though it's the exact same program, starting in the exact same position, it may behave differently than it did in the previous session, just to show you a little bit more about that randomization that happens. So it looks like it's still moving. It's definitely a different outcome from the first time. Looking around, doing that sweep. I'm wondering if maybe the cylinders are maybe a bit lower than the sensor position on the robot, and so that's something I'll show you in a minute that you can actually modify the robots, which is a cool aspect of the tool as well, because yeah, it doesn't look to me as though they're even detecting them. So that's enough of that demo. We'll reset our robot here, and just want to do a quick check-in how everybody's doing. We're okay to move on to our third method of moving the robot using make code.
Yeah, it looks like everything is good, Annika. We just had a question regarding because you have to split the screen to program, whether there's a way to transfer from one device to another, like if you have two computers, for example. The answers there were you can use a single computer with two monitors, split the screen, or of course you can program and then save the file, then move on to the other tab of your browser there.
Great. Thanks for letting me know what's going on in the discussion there. So the third way I wanted to show you is using make code. And for any of you that have used Scratch before, I think make code will look similar because it's more of the sort of vertical or ladder type programming, and the menus of blocks look very similar. There are different modes in Virtual Robotics Toolkit. You may notice in the top right-hand corner it says Advanced View. This gives you access to the full range of sort of tools and features of the software, and that's the version or the view that I like using. But if you click F12, which I'm going to do now, I get to this sort of simpler view. And this is the view that you have to be in order to code with make code. And so to do that, I just need to sort of show my screen in a different way. If you like split screen this way, this is also a way for you to do your programming in EV3. But to get the make code option, I'm going to click on F5. No, F8. F8. And then I have to click on this sort of dual view. Okay. So if you like side by side, this is probably not your preferred view, but this is how it's going to show up for us today. And so this is the Make Code environment here. I'm going to open a new project just to show you what that looks like. And if you're programming physical robots, you can also use Make Code, and there's a web-based version that allows you to see this full screen, and you can send the programs to your brick either wirelessly or using the USB cable that comes with the LEGO Mindstorms EV3 core set. So when you open the programming environment, these two blocks are there automatically. If you don't need them, you can click on and delete them. And then there are similar to the way there was at the bottom of the programming canvas for the LEGO Mindstorms EV3, there were a whole bunch of different blocks that you could use. Similarly, there are different blocks that you can use in Make Code to get your robot to do different things. And you can also use Make Code to program other things besides the LEGO Mindstorms EV3 robot, but we'll stick with this for today. Hoping that you can see just the variety of blocks from which you can choose. And as you can imagine, the complexity of these programs can get fairly advanced depending on how you combine these blocks together. But just to show you a very simple program comparable to the one that we created in the LEGO Mindstorms EV3 software, I'm going to open this one called Drive Turn, which is that's the simpler one that drives forward a bit, turns to the left, and then drives into the blocks and stops, even if it doesn't clear all of the tower. So I'm gonna, I think I might just, need to open my brick here. Oh, that was interesting. Okay. There we go. Great. So again, you can get the same outcome using whichever software you like better. And as I mentioned, you could create a similarly complex program to the one that I showed you in the LEGO Mindstorms EV3 software with some of the loops and switches and the use of sensors. But you know, depending on which one you have access to and which one your students like better, you can decide which one works best for you. Let's see if we can get it going one more time. All right. All right. Well, I'm hoping that since you saw it once, you'll take my word for it that it can work in both ways. So we've looked at how to move the robot using the keyboard or by programming it with two different methods. Would just like to escape from the Virtual Robotics Toolkit for a moment and check back to see some of the other cool things that you can do with the Virtual Robotics Toolkit. The main one is actually designing and building your own robots. So using the LEGO Digital Designer, You can build robots from a library of virtual Lego parts, and then you can, and if you don't want to build one from scratch, you can also download and modify existing models, some of which are available on the First Canada website that I mentioned earlier, but there are also folks who post their Lego Digital Designer models that you can use, and then you can adapt them however you like. And then once you've either built from scratch or adapted an existing model, you can actually import that into the Virtual Robotics Toolkit to complete the challenges using your own customized robots. And the other cool thing is once you've created something in Lego Digital Designer, you can create a parts list and a building instructions. So in the in the Lego Mindstorms EV3 software, I had opened earlier some building instructions to show you how to make one of these robots from scratch using Lego pieces. The Lego Digital Designer actually creates instructions like these. So if you can imagine, one of your students building a robot and then sharing the instructions with another to allow them to actually build that robot virtually at home, that would be cool too. I'll open a Lego Digital Designer quickly just to show you the environment and also to give us enough time for any questions or comments before the end of today's session. So I think what I'll do, I'm hoping that it will open this saved version. This is a model that I imported from somewhere else. And then you can use, you can see over on the left that there's a big parts library. So you can add pieces. Oh, there it is. You can take pieces off and move them around, change their direction. You can select pieces from the library to add to your model. And it takes a little while to get accustomed to some of the different features of this software, but again, pretty powerful considering that every Lego piece ever is available in Lego Digital Designer. And since there are some pre-built models, it gives students a base from which to start. They don't have to just build something totally from scratch. But of course, they could either using their own imagination or using some of the build instructions that exist out there, originally designed for use with the physical robots, but could also be recreated in a virtual environment in Lego Digital Designer. Sound cool? I think so. I'm going to, again, the process of importing a robot is a little bit more time consuming, but there are some instructions in the resources to let you know how to do that if that's something that you'd like to try. But I will show you really quickly in the advanced view that there's an import, there's an import tool. So if you click on there, it'll guide you through a wizard that will allow you to bring your robots in from that Lego Digital Designer into the Virtual Robotics Toolkit. Okay. Some of the other things that are coming soon include participation in virtual competitions. So you can still set up competitions among your students if you like, just using the software the way it is, but Cogmation is working on an environment in which those scores can actually be recorded and you can compete against not only one another, but against people all over the country or all over the world. And if this is something that you'd like to present to your students and you're not really sure how to start or how to structure that, there is a course that was developed by Robots Got Talents called STEM Hero. And it it breaks down the steps to using the Virtual Robotics Toolkit and programming robots using the Lego Mindstorms EV3 software. So that might be something that you're interested, and if so, this is the link at which you can access the course resource, and it's a fairly comprehensive booklet or manual that helps guide you and your students through the process of learning how to program these virtual robots. And then once they are experts at programming virtual robotics, because maybe they've taken the Robots Got Talent STEM Hero course, there are some activities that they can complete. I'll just open them quickly to show you what that looks like. So these activities are actually based on lessons that were created by Logix Academy. So Rami, this one will probably look familiar, but as an example, there's one activity in which the robot simulates the way a blood cell would travel through the circulatory system, but instead the circulatory system is represented by the maze through which the robot needs to navigate. And there are 10 different activities here that connect with different aspects of the math and science curriculum, like measurement or data management and probability. And you might want to take a look at these activities, all of which can be completed with no coding whatsoever. So these activities can all be done using just the keyboard keys. But if you wanted to add in that additional level of challenge for the students, they could also code the robots to complete the challenge described in these activities. Okay. As mentioned, the slideshow will be shared with you so that if you missed the links to any of those resources, you can still access them after today's call. And maybe while my slideshow is loading, Rami, we may be able to check and see who's still on the call and announce the winner of the first Canada merchandise prize pack.
Yeah, maybe there's just thought I'd go over a couple of questions that I wanted to leave till the end. Okay. So first question, Annika, was around I'm assuming this is in Designer, so Lego Digital Designer. Yep. Does it handle wiring as well, or is it just mechanical design? And then how does that? Yeah. So do the students hook up the cables? Can they do it correctly, incorrectly, etc.?
Yeah, so the wiring doesn't happen in the Lego Digital Designer, although you can add wires. I'll just open it really quickly. Oh, it's not in this. Yeah, so you can add the wires, but it doesn't connect to anything yet. Where the connection happens is actually in Virtual Robotics Toolkit. So that wizard that I mentioned asks you which ports you want to connect to which sensors and which motors. So you actually have to specify that when you import it into Virtual Robotics Toolkit, but it's a good idea to put them in here just so that you know that something has to be connected there eventually. Does that sound okay?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. And again, folks, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to take advantage of a couple of features. Number one, you can put your questions in the chat, and I'll try to help guide that along. Number two, you could always use the raise your hand feature, which is just at the bottom by hovering over in the Teams, and then unmute yourself and verbally ask the question as well. So another question came up is, Annika, are you able to add multiple EV3 robots in the same environment? Yeah, that was the question.
You are, yeah. So yes is the short answer. I'll show you really quickly how that can happen. There's an objects library. So you, if I, the robots are sort of hidden in here, but I know that there's one in here. So if I wanted to use a robot called EV3 vacuum cleaner, I could actually drag it out of the objects library and into stop this, sorry. So I'll try that again. I can drag the robot out of the objects library and into the environment, and each of them will have a different name. And so with respect to connecting them wirelessly or via Bluetooth in the EV3 software, you would just click which one you want to send your programs to. So as of right now, this robot is probably floating up in the air, and there are ways that you can position it where it's supposed to go, and I'll spare you the details about how to do that, but there is an instructional video that gives you some tips on how to get it down onto the actual platform where you want it to go.
Awesome, thank you for that. The next one, Annika, was, are the activities available on iPad or iPad friendly? So I know we mentioned that the platform is only on Windows and Mac OS, but in terms of the activities, that's just a URL. So are they able to be opened on iPad?
Yeah, are these the ones here to which you're referring?
Correct, yes. This is from Lisa.
Yeah, question. And these are really just Word documents. And so it's almost like you'll see it when it opens, but yeah, you can definitely access these on any device because it links to a PDF, and there are some, it's not even fillable. It's almost like a worksheet style setup, and can be answered in different ways depending on how you want to collect that info from students.
That's great. Thanks for that. So yeah, it's a simple PDF. So yes, Lisa. Any other questions from the group? We are just winding down with a few more minutes here. I first want to take a few moments to thank Annika so much for leading us through that. It's never easy to demonstrate everything virtually, but I think this is a great example of a tool that can be used virtually with your students. And so again, thank you to FIRST Robotics Canada, and thank you to Annika so much for her time in leading us through that. And I see Annika shared her information there on the screen, that if anyone has any questions after today, I'm going to be sharing a couple of resources with you now on how to follow up in case you missed something during the presentation, and how can you follow up after today. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to switch over at the moment to my screen there, Annika, and just share information about the winner and next steps.
I will try.
And I have put Annika's email in the chat as well for all of you to access. As everyone knows, or you may know, this link to this Teams is actually available after today as well. So if for any reason you're able to just click back to the same link, come back here, and you'll access the whole history of the chat. And you can see the questions that were asked, any links or URLs or emails that were put there. That's why we're kind of putting everything in the chat for your reference. That's number one. Number two, this session is being recorded, and the videos are available after today. They're all put onto the Logix YouTube channel under Virtual Training Series playlist. and you can link to that from the virtual training website. That will all be coming up by the end of the day tomorrow. So again, everything is located under the same page, logicsacademy.com/virtual training, where you accessed and registered for this course. The last thing I do want to clarify, and I apologize for the mix-up there. I believe when the email went out, it only had the link to the Windows download, and that's why some folks with Mac couldn't. But by connecting to the first Lego or the Lego website, you were able to access the software and all the links for Mac. So that's great that you've been able to do that, and we'll correct that for future sessions for this. So that's good to know. So again, after today, if you have any questions or you're interested in continuing to learn more, please don't hesitate to join our virtual training series at logicsacademy.com/virtual training. And again, recorded sessions, thank you to Michelle for posting that in the chat, are available on the Logix YouTube channel. Of course, it does take some time to get up there, so it's not up there yet. And last but not least, we want to do a little digital drum roll for today's winner. And the draw winner is Heather Scott, ID 27 in registration. And Heather is a grade 6 to 8 educator at Rundle Academy. So I'll turn that over to Annika to connect with Heather. Congratulations, Heather. I'm sure you'll get on virtually and share your swag and after. So that's awesome, and congratulations. And again, thanks to First and to Annika for their support, their sponsorship, and leading us in this session. Annika and I will stick around if you have any more questions. Of course, you may have some questions. We are a small group now, so feel free to unmute yourself and just ask aloud, or you can put it on the chat. Otherwise, folks, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you're able to use this resource as a tool to engage your kids and give them something meaningful to do remotely, as well as even when we go back into a blended learning environment. So have a wonderful, I guess, afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in our country, and we'll go from there. There is one more question that I see here that we missed. Will First Lego be a virtual challenge this season? So the question's about First Robotics. I guess FLL, is that going to be a virtual, or what's going to happen for the September season, or I guess August season?
The short answer is to be determined. There will be a season. What that looks like remains to be seen. And if I knew, I would tell you. Believe me, I want to know too. But their First headquarters and First Canada are working hard to, as all of us are, right, put into place different plans